You have exactly 17 minutes to let me go.
Stop resisting!
You have exactly 17 minutes to let me go.
The warning rang out firm and unshakable from Maya Washington, a woman now pinned against the scorching hood of a car. On Interstate 26, the highway glowed in the fading sunset. Engines hummed, horns echoed in the distance, but along the shoulder the silence was suffocating. Two officers stepped closer, red and blue lights flashing across the metals gleaming on her chest. They saw defiance where there was none, and the audience was forced to choose stand with justice or with power abused. That woman was Lieutenant Maya Washington. Just minutes earlier, she had left her promotion ceremony carrying on her shoulders 14 years of service, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and a family waiting at home. Yet now all of that honor seemed meaningless beneath the weight of their suspicion. What they didn't know, Maya carried another weapon invisible, but formidable, an emergency protocol of her own design. And once activated, the balance of power would tilt in ways no one could predict. On the long stretch of I-26 leading toward Charleston, the late afternoon sun spilled in golden streaks across the road. Lieutenant Maya Washington sat behind the wheel of her navy blue sedan, heart swelling with relief and pride. Today, after 14 years of service, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and countless commendations, she had officially earned her new rank. Her crisp dress uniform still felt new on her shoulders, silver bars catching the light proof of sacrifice and endurance. In her mind, she pictured her family who had flown from Chicago to celebrate. She wanted nothing more than to get home and wrap them in her arms. But that joy shattered the moment a patrol car flared in her rearview mirror, red and blue lights strobing. Maya glanced at her speedometer 63 on a 65-mile road. She had broken no law. Still, instinct honed by her father, a 20-year Army veteran, took over. As a black woman, you must always keep your hands on the wheel, always be clear. We don't get the presumption of innocence. She signaled, pulled onto the shoulder, and placed her hands firmly at 10 and 2. A familiar chill spread through her spine. The patrol car door opened. 2 officers approached, one on each side. The tall 1 badge reading Reynolds rapped hard on the glass. Maya rolled it down, her voice steady. "Good afternoon, officer. How can I help you?" Reynolds' eyes swept through the car, searching for a hidden crime. On the other side, Officer Cooper already rested his hand on his holster. The air tightened, a taut string ready to snap. "License and registration." Reynolds barked. Maya nodded, calm. "The registration is in the right compartment, license in my wallet. I'll retrieve them now, if permitted." "Hurry up," Reynolds cut her off. She handed over her military ID and registration papers. Army insignias were clearly printed, but Reynolds barely glanced before frowning. "This isn't a driver's license." "Sir, this is my military identification. I am Lieutenant Maya Washington, U.S. Army, stationed at Fort Jackson. I just left my promotion ceremony." Reynolds and Cooper exchanged a look. Maya's stomach sank. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," Reynolds ordered. "May I ask why I wasn't speeding? I broke no law. That military plate looks suspicious. We've had imposters posing as soldiers." "Step out now." Maya knew arguing would only escalate things. She unbuckled, stepped out, and stood in military posture medals glinting against 2 cold stares. "You can contact Colonel James Harrison at Fort Jackson to verify my identity." Cooper sneered. "What, teaching us how to do our jobs?" Lieutenant Maya's tone stayed even, "No, only offering you a clear way to confirm." Reynolds circled the car, hand brushing the trunk eyes sharp. "What's in the vehicle? Why so nervous?" "Not at all, officer. I just attended a ceremony. Only my uniform and personal items inside." Hands on the hood, Reynolds suddenly barked. "Excuse me, am I being detained for?" I said. "Hands on the car." His voice snapped, hand hovering near his gun. Maya complied, palms pressed to the burning metal. "Sir, I'd like to know the reason I'm being detained." "Shut your mouth. You're resisting and questioning my authority." Reynolds snarled, though she hadn't resisted at all. As Cooper began to search her, Maya's voice cut through, measured but fierce. I am a U.S. Army officer. This stop is baseless. I will be calling my superior." In that instant, the situation turned dark. Reynolds seized her arm and twisted it behind her back. "Here, you're not allowed to call anyone, and you have no right to give orders." A sickening thud rang out as Maya's temples slammed against the car. Hot blood streamed down her cheek. Through the haze of pain, her finger pressed a hidden button on her smartwatch. Protocol Delta 7 engaged. A faint smile touched her lips. "You have exactly 17 minutes to let me go. Stop resisting." Reynolds roared, though Maya stood perfectly still, obeying every command. "I am not resisting," she replied calmly, even as Cooper roughly wrenched her other arm and snapped the cold cuffs onto her wrists. Her face pressed against the metallic paint of the car, her vision narrowing to the sight of slowing vehicles. Some stopped entirely silent witnesses. Good. At least someone saw. As the two officers spiraled out of control, Maya heard their muttered prejudice words they thought she couldn't catch. "These people always think a uniform gives them privilege," Cooper grumbled. "Probably slipped in thanks to some diversity quota," Reynolds sneered. Maya didn't react. Instead, her military training took over. Assess the situation, identify options, execute the most effective plan. While they argued over whether to shove her into the patrol car, Maya subtly tapped her watch face in a coded rhythm, 3 short, 2 long. Protocol Delta 7. The emergency system she herself had helped build after a string of similar incidents targeting soldiers of color. Memory surged back a summer afternoon in South Chicago. 14-year-old Maya tailed through a mall by police without cause. Her father sat her down, eyes steady. "Maya, the world isn't fair, but you're strong, you're smart, and you will change it. Just remember, always keep your dignity. That's the one thing they can never take from you." As if sensing her covert act, Reynolds yanked her away from the car. "You think that uniform makes you special? Underneath the fabric, you're all the same." Maya remained silent, counting down in her head. She knew the timeline: 3 minutes for the first alert, 7 for the initial response, 12 for command notification, 17 if necessary for full tactical deployment. Reynolds and Cooper still bickered over fabricated charges when a black SUV unmarked rolled to a stop behind the patrol car. Then another, and another. Doors opened and men in plain clothes stepped out, their stride firm, their bearing unmistakably military. Tom Cooper muttered tension in his voice. "We've got company." Reynolds turned irritation slipping into unease as more vehicles closed the circle. Maya's lips curved. They had made a grave mistake and they were about to pay. In a heartbeat, the roadside atmosphere shifted. Protocol Delta 7 was fully live. Within 3 minutes of Maya's signal, alerts had already gone out to the Department of Justice, to military police, and to the Civil Rights Division. Overhead satellites adjusted, capturing high-resolution images, archiving every movement, every word. "What the hell is this?" Reynolds' snapped hand drifting near his weapon. A man in a gray suit stepped forward, his calm stride radiating authority. "Officer Reynolds, keep your hands visible." His voice didn't need volume power alone, froze the air. "How do you know my name?" Reynolds stammered for the first time, betraying fear. The man ignored him. Eyes on Maya. "Lieutenant Washington, are you injured?" Maya barely had time to answer before Reynolds cut in. "She's under arrest for resisting and impersonating a soldier." The man turned back, eyes cold as steel-controlled fury simmering. "I am Special Agent Marcus Daniels, U.S. Department of Defense. Lieutenant Washington is operating under Protocol Delta 7, a federal security measure that overrides your jurisdiction. I'll ask again. Lieutenant, are you injured?" Maya straightened her voice, clipped and precise, as if reporting to command. "Minor laceration to the right temple, sir. No further injuries." Daniels gave a sharp nod, then lifted his wrist mic. "Medical team move in. Documentation team begin." Immediately, 2 medics rushed forward with trauma kits, while others pulled out cameras and recording devices, documenting every detail with military precision. The atmosphere was dense with order and authority. Cooper fidgeted, sweat trickling down his temple. "Listen, This was just a routine traffic stop that got complicated. No need to blow it out of proportion, Reynolds stammered, struggling to regain control. But even as he spoke, more vehicles rolled in, and one bearing the insignia of military police, another unmarked but unmistakably federal. "This suspect has," Reynolds began. "Lieutenant Washington is not a suspect." Agent Daniels cut him off, his voice like steel. "She is a decorated Army officer who was forced to activate an emergency protocol after being assaulted while in uniform. And Officer Reynolds, every second of that, has been recorded." Reynolds' face blanched. Daniels continued, each word landing like a blade. "Satellite data at 17:42:37 confirms you forced Lieutenant Washington's head against the vehicle. The force of impact was sufficient to cause the injury, now being treated by medical staff." Tense silence fell. Behind her, Maya clearly heard the medic's report over comms: minor head trauma consistent with blunt impact against the vehicle. Sensing the ground collapsing beneath them, Cooper blurted out, "If there's been any misunderstanding, we can release her immediately." He fumbled with the cuff keys, reaching toward Maya, only to be blocked by two military police officers. "Evidence preservation protocol is now in effect," one said firmly. "The cuffs will be removed and sealed by forensics." As they spoke, Maya's mind flickered back 6 months to the day she presented her proposal to expand Protocol Delta 7. She had laid out case after case of soldiers of color harassed, detained, even injured while in uniform. "We cannot afford to only react after the damage is done," she had told the board of senior officers. "We need immediate intervention and irrefutable proof." Colonel James Harrison had stood with her, then silencing every objection. "This isn't only about protecting our people. It's about protecting the dignity of the uniform." That memory steadied her now. Standing on the roadside, blood still tracing her temple, she felt the very system she had fought to defend, dismantling the power of those who had humiliated and restrained her. A call buzzed in Daniel's earpiece. He listened, then turned toward Reynolds and Cooper. "Colonel Harrison, Lieutenant Washington's commanding officer, is on the line with your sheriff. He wants to speak directly." Daniels handed over a secure phone. Reynolds hesitated, then took it. Whatever words he heard on the other end drained the color from his face. His hand trembled as he passed the device back. There may have been a misunderstanding. The sheriff has instructed us to release the lieutenant immediately and return to the station." Daniels slipped the phone away. "That will not happen, Officer Reynolds. You and your partner will remain here until documentation is complete and formal statements are taken." At that moment, the air thudded with rotor blades. A military helicopter swept low overhead, its shadow cutting across the ground, underlining the severity of the incident. The forensic team unclasped the cuffs from Maya's wrists, sealed them in an evidence bag. Medics continued tending her wound while photographers captured every angle. 30 minutes after the protocol was triggered, a government SUV pulled up. Colonel James Harrison stepped out, his face, stern anger tightly contained. His expression softened only when his eyes fell on Maya. "Lieutenant Washington," he said, his voice deep respectful. "Forgive me for arriving late." Maya forced herself upright, saluting despite the pain. "No apology necessary, sir." Harrison turned, facing Reynolds and Cooper. His voice dropped, every word like a hammer. "Do you understand what you've done today? You assaulted a decorated officer. You trampled her civil rights. You insulted the United States uniform. And worst of all, you triggered a federal protocol that will examine everything: your actions, your policies, even your personal and professional histories under a microscope." Silence. Only the drone of the helicopter above and the heavy weight of two men stripped of the authority they thought they held. Reynolds tried to speak, his voice quivering. The command drained from it. "Sir, we were only following procedure. We suspected Lieutenant Washington might be—" "She served 2 tours in Afghanistan." Harrison cut him off, his tone unyielding. "She has been awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart. And today she was promoted for her outstanding work, developing the very security system that brought us here, the protocol that stripped you of your power." Cooper's face drained of color as if he had swallowed ice. We We didn't know. Harrison's eyes locked on him. Correct. And that is the problem. You didn't know because you chose not to see the human being standing in front of you. You saw only through prejudice, not through truth. He turned to Maya, his gaze weighted. Lieutenant, are you prepared to initiate a full-scale deployment of Protocol Delta 7? Maya stood tall, blood still seeping from her temple, but her voice was firm. Prepared, sir. Very well. Harrison pivoted, issuing commands to the assembled teams. Complete documentation. Retrieve every digital record. Conduct a full background investigation. I want everything: parking receipts, personal texts, every detail. His eyes swept back to Reynolds and Cooper. This incident will not be buried. It will not be minimized. And it will certainly not be forgotten. Harrison's words fell like hammer blows, the air growing heavier with each one. Maya recalled her father's voice. You must always keep your dignity. That is the one thing they can never take. But now she had done more than that. She had turned injustice into judgment. Across town, inside the sheriff's office, a door slammed so hard that the framed certificates on the wall rattled. Sheriff Daniel Williams, 30 years in law enforcement, 7 as the county's top officer, had never faced a situation like this. Since Colonel Harrison's call, his phone had rung without pause. The mayor, the city council, the police union, the press, everyone demanded answers he didn't have. Opposite him sat Captain Gloria Ramirez of Internal Affairs, her face drawn tight as if she'd rather be anywhere but here. Say it again, Williams barked, pacing the length of the desk. What exactly are we dealing with? Ramirez read from her tablet. Officers Reynolds and Cooper conducted a stop on Lieutenant Maya Washington, U.S. Army. The situation escalated into physical contact, resulting in the lieutenant being handcuffed and sustaining a head injury. At that point, she activated something called Protocol Delta 7, an emergency military response system. Williams clawed at his thinning hair, scattering it. And now we've got military, police, federal agents, and 5 other agencies crawling through our systems, pulling data, interrogating my officers. They've already suspended Reynolds and Cooper. Under what authority? Technically, our own Ramirez said, sliding a document across the desk. You signed a federal cooperation agreement last year. Page 6, paragraph 4. It specifies procedures for incidents involving service members. Williams didn't bother to look his growl low. This is a misunderstanding. Reynolds and Cooper are good cops. I've known Reynolds since he was a rookie. Ramirez lifted her eyes, voice heavy. With all due respect, sir, the initial evidence doesn't support that. She turned her tablet to show dashcam footage, Reynolds slamming Washington's head against the car, her dress uniform gleaming, metals visible. Williams swallowed hard, his gut nodding. There has to be some explanation. There's more. Ramirez added carefully. The feds pulled surveillance from 3 stores along the route, 17 civilian videos, and they have satellite imagery, sir. Satellite imagery. At the same time, they're running full background checks on every officer, starting with Reynolds and Cooper. The sheriff's phone rang again. He snatched it up, snapping. I'm in a meeting, I can't. The mayor's voice bellowed so loud, Ramirez heard it too. Not now, Dan. Are you joking? I've got the governor on the line and reporters swarming City Hall. Fix this. Then the call cut. Williams set the phone down as if it might explode. Exhaling hard, he turned to Ramirez. Get the union rep in here and find me anything that explains why my officers treated a uniformed soldier like that. Ramirez hesitated, then spoke quietly. One more thing. The feds are demanding all traffic stop records from Reynolds and Cooper over the past 3 years. They're focusing on a particular factor. Williams looked up, his face going pale. What factor? Ramirez paused, then enunciated each word. Demographics, sir. They're reviewing the race of everyone Reynolds and Cooper have ever stopped. Williams pulled up the personnel files for Reynolds and Cooper on his computer screen. Everything looked clean. A few civilian complaints, all dismissed. Nothing explained the dashcam footage he'd just seen. The door opened, and Michael Donovan, the police union representative, entered, accompanied by a young IT technician whose face was drawn tight. Sir, we need to get ahead of this, Donovan began. The Union is ready to issue a statement defending our officers and questioning the military's authority. William shook his head, his voice rough. Not yet. I need to understand what really happened. He turned to the IT tech. What did you find? The young man swallowed hard. Sir, the data shows irregularities in Reynolds and Cooper's traffic stops. They pulled over black drivers 4 times more often than other officers in the same area. And the arrest rate for black drivers after those stops, 6 times higher than the department average. Donovan shot back instantly. That proves nothing. Maybe they just patrol higher crime zones. I controlled for patrol areas and stop frequencies, sir, the tech replied, shaking his head. The disparity remains clear. A sharp ache flared behind William's temple. What about the body cams today? That's the problem, the tech answered, voice low. Both units have gaps in their data. Reynolds' camera malfunctioned at the exact moment Lieutenant Washington was injured. Williams's jaw tightened. How convenient. Donovan leaned into, voice rising. Sir, our officers deserve the presumption of innocence. This military protocol is an overreaction. Let's issue a statement backing them, calm Washington down, and the whole thing will blow over. The door burst open. Deputy Chief Bernard Palmer entered, his face heavy as stone. It's not blowing over, Mike. The media already has the whole story. Someone leaked the dash cam of Reynolds slamming the lieutenant's head into the car. It's playing on every news channel. Williams collapsed into his chair. How bad is it? Palmer set a phone on the desk. On the screen, a headline blazed, decorated black army officer assaulted by police while in uniform. The image of Maya Washington, blood streaking her temple wrists, cuffed, medals shining. Worse, Palmer continued. They've got her service record. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. She once threw herself onto what she thought was a live grenade to shield her squad. It turned out to be a dud, but she didn't know that at the time. God, Williams muttered. Not finished. Someone also leaked Reynolds and Cooper's stop data. CNN is running a segment on racial profiling in our department. Donovan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face blanching. The Union is changing its stance. They're advising we protect the majority of uninvolved officers and cut Reynolds and Cooper loose. Throw them under the bus, Williams said bitterly. Palmer pressed on. The military has requested full personnel files on both officers. And here's the medical report on Lieutenant Washington: concussion, 6 stitches, facial bruising. Williams stared at the screen, Maya Washington's face calm despite injury, blood stark against her immaculate uniform. He wondered, what had his officers been thinking? A knock sounded. Ramirez entered. Sir, Colonel Harrison from Fort Jackson is here. He wants to see you immediately. Williams nodded stiffly. Ramirez added, He's not alone. Lieutenant Washington is with him, and what looks like an entire legal team. Williams's chest tightened. Before he could rise, his phone rang again. On the screen, DOJ Civil Rights Division. The walls felt like they were closing in. The door opened. Harrison strode in without preamble. Sheriff Williams, I believe you're holding something that belongs to my officer. The military aide placed an evidence bag on the desk. Inside was Maya's military ID, the same card Reynolds had dismissed. Maya Washington entered, a white bandage wrapped around her temple, her posture unbroken. 3 attorneys trailed behind her, briefcases in hand, forming a wall around her like bodyguards. Williams rose, hand outstretched. Lieutenant Washington. I want to offer enough. Harrison cut in, his voice firm. We are not here to listen to apologies. We are here to inform you how this will proceed. At his nod, one of the lawyers stepped forward, snapping open a case, the office lights flashing against a thick stack of documents. Another nod from Harrison, and a woman in a sharp army uniform stepped up, her gaze steady. Sheriff Williams, Warrant and Major Sarah Winters of the U.S. Army, Judge Advocate General's Corps. The Army formally requests all files related to Officers Reynolds and Cooper, including personal information, training history, and every traffic stop record. In addition, we will expand our investigation into departmental policies, training procedures, and demographic data in enforcement practices. Williams glanced at Donovan, the union rep, and received only a helpless shrug. "We will fully cooperate," Williams said stiffly. That was when Maya spoke, her voice measured and clear. "Will you really cooperate, Sheriff? Because we've already discovered irregularities in your files, records altered, body cameras with convenient gaps." Sweat dotted Williams' brow. "Lieutenant, I assure you, your assurances mean nothing to me." Maya cut in her eyes cold. "Your officers assaulted me in uniform. They dismissed my military identification. They spat racial slurs thinking I couldn't hear, and now the evidence is gone. But Protocol Delta 7 doesn't rely on your evidence, Sheriff. We have our own." Harrison placed a steady hand on Maya's shoulder, not to restrain, but as affirmation. "Lieutenant Washington has refused all settlement offers. She has declined every non-disclosure agreement. She wants the truth revealed to the public." Williams fumbled for words, but Palmer's phone rang, shattering the silence. The deputy chief glanced at the screen, then blanched. "Sir, new development. Someone leaked Reynolds's and Cooper's text messages from the past year. They're full of racist content, talking about targeting black drivers, even joking about fabricating charges." Williams closed his eyes briefly, then opened them to find Maya's unwavering stare. "This isn't just about me," she said softly. "How many others did they harm, people who didn't have a military protocol to protect them? How many lives were broken? And how long did you look away?" The question hung heavy unanswered. Williams knew the department would never be the same. The issue wasn't whether there would be consequences, but how deep they would cut. A pattern of discrimination stretched back years. An investigator hesitated before speaking. "One more thing, Lieutenant. They didn't just target civilians. We've identified 27 incidents in the past 18 months where Reynolds and Cooper deliberately stopped black service members. Most never filed complaints. They just endured it as though being black in uniform was part of the burden." Maya's chest tightened. She thought of her comrades, dedicated soldiers humiliated on their own soil without the shield of Protocol Delta 7 to protect them. A knock at the door pulled her back. Major Sarah Winters returned a heavy file in her arms. "The Department of Justice is expanding the investigation," she announced. "They're launching a pattern and practice probe, a full review of the Charleston Police Department. This could result in federal oversight." Colonel Harrison arched a brow. "That's a major step." "It is," Winters nodded. "And they've requested Lieutenant Washington as the lead witness." Maya straightened her voice, resolute. "I'm ready, whatever it takes." Winters hesitated, then set another folder on the table before Harrison. "The police union has shifted strategy. Instead of defending Reynolds and Cooper, they're trying to undermine you, Lieutenant. They've leaked part of your military file highlighting that early disciplinary hearing in Afghanistan." Maya's jaw tightened. That hearing her clash with a superior over the treatment of Afghan civilians. Later, that very officer was court-martialed for human rights violations. She had been right. But stripped of context, the file could paint her as insubordinate in the public eye. Harrison frowned. "A familiar tactic? Attack the character to obscure the truth." Winters nodded. "They'll try to paint her as politically motivated, anti-police." Maya's voice was steady calm. "Let them try. My record speaks for itself." Meanwhile, at City Hall, Sheriff Williams sat in an emergency meeting with the mayor and the city council. The air was suffocating. "This is no longer about 2 officers," the mayor said, pacing. "Federal investigators have identified 14 other officers with the same racial profiling patterns. 14 Dan. That's nearly 20% of your patrol force." Williams had no rebuttal. Evidence was piling up day after day. What had begun as a single traffic stop was tearing the lid off an entire system. Other victims were emerging, dozens, mostly people of color who had endured the same treatment but lacked the means or power to fight back. "There's more," the city attorney added grimly. Lieutenant Washington's grandfather was Sergeant James Washington, 92nd Infantry Division, Buffalo Soldiers, World War II. When he returned to Charleston in 1945, still in uniform, police beat him. No one was ever charged. The room fell silent. Everyone understood history's shadow was back, For generations, the Washington family had served their country, and for generations they had tasted humiliation at the hands of those sworn to uphold the law. At the FBI headquarters, Agent Camila Rodriguez leaned across the table during her interrogation of Officer Cooper. He kept his head down, a voice barely audible. It wasn't just a few stops, it was the whole system. Reynolds called it the game. You got points for each arrest. More points if it was a soldier, because they had more to lose if they fought back. Rodriguez's tone sharpened, and the department leadership, Cooper hesitated, then gave a small nod. They knew. Maybe not the details, but the numbers were obvious. Our arrest rate for black drivers was way above average. No one asked questions. On the contrary, Reynolds was named Officer of the Month 3 times last year. The investigation widened, and Maya suddenly found herself at the center of public attention. Journalists flooded her with interview requests. Civil rights organizations reached out with support. On social media, a movement erupted, black service members sharing their stories under the hashtag #InUniform. It spread nationwide, a painful reminder that wearing the uniform didn't always mean respect. Despite the storm, Maya stayed focused, working closely with federal agencies to document every detail of the case. The turning point came a month later when a Charleston internal affairs detective quietly approached the FBI, a USB drive in hand. "I can't hand this over publicly," he told Agent Rodriguez. "But everything is in here. The contents were explosive training manuals, unofficial directives, 5 years of internal communications. All pointed to the same conclusion: discriminatory practices weren't just tolerated, they were incentivized. Officers earned performance points for more arrests in priority areas, a thinly veiled term for black neighborhoods. And most damning of all, emails bearing Sheriff Williams' own signature discussing how to increase the department's budget by boosting arrests in target zones. The revelations blew past local control. The Department of Justice announced a sweeping investigation into the Charleston Police Department, citing Lieutenant Washington's case as proof of systemic failure to protect basic civil rights. In her small apartment, Maya sat quietly gazing at a photo of her grandfather in his Buffalo soldier's uniform. She whispered, "We're still fighting the same war, Grandpa. But this time, we have evidence. This time, they can't look away." Her phone rang. "Colonel Harrison, Lieutenant, the DOJ wants to meet with you tomorrow. They intend to use your case as the foundation for a nationwide review of how police treat service members of color." Maya drew a deep breath. What had begun as a personal ordeal was now a milestone with the power to shift the nation. "I'll be there, sir," she answered firmly. When she hung up, her fingers brushed the healing scar on her temple. It would remain forever a painful memory, but perhaps also the mark of a turning point: accountability reform and long overdue recognition. Then the media storm struck. Someone inside the investigation leaked the entire dashcam footage uncut raw. Within hours, it spread across social media like a digital tsunami. Hashtags #ProtectOurProtectors and #HuntLieutenant Washington rocketed to the top of trending lists. The images were stark, undeniable Maya. In her dress uniform, medals gleaming calm and composed even as the officers grew more aggressive. The moment Reynolds slammed her head into the car, blood streaking her dark skin, staining the pristine white of her uniform, left the nation stunned. Public reaction was explosive. Outside Charleston Police Headquarters, hundreds of protesters gathered, holding up signs with Maya's face. Many were veterans wearing their service caps to show solidarity. The veterans of foreign wars issued a strong statement calling it an intolerable insult against an officer who once risked her life for this country. At Fort Jackson, a different scene unfolded. Hundreds of soldiers, active duty and retired, stood silently in formation uniforms, pressed boots shining. No chants, no slogans. Their very presence was the message. On social media, an image of Maya receiving her Bronze Star was placed side by side with the dashcam still captioned, "She once faced enemy fire with courage. Now she faces hostile police with the same courage." The image became an emblem. For Maya, the attention was both uncomfortable and inescapable. She had never sought the spotlight. She only wanted to do her duty. Now her face was on the evening news on protest placards on banners across the city. The Army had to assign an entire communications team just to help her navigate the storm. Captain Jessica Morris, head of public affairs, laid an analysis on the table. The narrative is overwhelmingly in your favor. But some groups are pushing a counter-argument. Why didn't you follow civilian procedures instead of triggering a military protocol? Maya only nodded, unsurprised. Morris hesitated. And the threats. There are serious warnings. We've had to increase security around both your residence and your workplace. The backlash wasn't limited to faceless threats. Reynolds and Cooper, suspended and facing dismissal, became symbols for those framing the incident as a war on police, rather than accountability. Once convinced of their own power, they were now the flashpoints of national division. Their families weren't spared. Cooper's wife and children were forced to leave the city after their address was leaked online, bombarded with threats. Reynolds's parents, both retired officers, appeared on conservative talk shows, fiercely defending their son. He was set up, his father insisted. He was just doing his job. That so-called Protocol Delta 7 was clearly designed ahead of time to take down good cops. The nation split deeply. The governor of South Carolina called for sweeping reforms in police training and oversight. At the same time, several state legislators accused the federal government of overreach. In Charleston, the city council's emergency session, expected to be procedural, erupted into a public forum. Hundreds of citizens packed the chamber, many demanding immediate action. One mother's voice broke with grief. "My son wears the uniform just like Lieutenant Washington. He serves this country with his whole heart, and yet, here at home, he's treated like a criminal. How many more must endure this when they don't have a military protocol to shield them?" As public pressure surged, Maya received an unexpected invitation to speak at a national conference on policing and civil rights. Colonel Harrison cautioned her, "This goes beyond your military duty, Lieutenant. No one is forcing you to become the face of this movement." Maya's reply was unwavering. "Sir, I'm the one who activated Protocol Delta 7. I knew it would bring scrutiny and change. If I stay silent now, it would betray its very purpose." Harrison studied her for a long moment. "You understand this could affect your Army career, I do, sir. But the bell has already rung, and I will never wish it silent." As Maya weighed her choice, social media erupted. The hashtag #ProtectYourProtectors exploded over 2 million posts in a single week, turning into a nationwide virtual tribunal where service members of all races shared their stories of harassment by police while in uniform. For the first time, the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the NAACP issued a joint statement demanding national standards for how police treat military personnel. The press dug deeper, uncovering dozens of similar incidents across the United States, cases once buried in silence. Maya's ordeal was no longer seen as an isolated event, but the symbol of a systemic crisis. Through it all, Maya maintained her military bearing, appearing at hearings and strategy sessions, declining most interviews. In one rare statement to a military journal, she said, "This isn't about punishment. It's about accountability and reform. No one who serves this country should have to fear those sworn to protect their community." 6 weeks after the fateful traffic stop, Maya finally accepted her first public speaking engagement to address a joint session of military leadership and police chiefs from across the nation. Standing at the podium in her immaculate dress uniform, the scar on her temple still visible, Maya spoke with clarity. "I activated Protocol Delta 7, not just for myself, but for every service member who endured the same treatment without a shield to protect them. This is not an indictment of the entire police force. Many officers serve with honor and respect. But it is a call for accountability for those who do not, and for the systems that protect them instead of the citizens." Her words echoed through the chamber, broadcast live nationwide. The applause that erupted was thunderous, but Maya did not seek satisfaction. She knew true change would not be measured by clapping hands, but by new policies, new practices, and the quiet safety of those who would wear the uniform after her. That night, escorted back to her apartment by security, Maya found an envelope slipped under her door despite the building's tight security. Inside was a handwritten note, shaky but resolute. "My husband was wrong. He knows it now. Thank you for forcing him to see the truth he never dared or wanted to face. My child will grow up in a different world because of your courage." Signed, Cooper's wife. Maya carefully placed the letter in her desk drawer beside the photo of her grandfather in his Buffalo soldier's uniform. 2 generations, half a century apart, bound by the same struggle and the same rare kind of courage. The movement she had unwittingly sparked grew larger, spreading far beyond her personal case, touching deeper questions of race service and justice in America. But so too did the backlash. 3 months later, with the federal investigation still unresolved, the Charleston Police Association staged a press conference on the steps of City Hall. Behind Union President Michael Donovan, dozens of officers stood in rigid formation. "We support accountability for genuine misconduct." Donovan set his voice booming across rows of microphones from every major news outlet. But what we see today is the vilification of an entire profession built on allegations against 2 officers. This has gone beyond a fair investigation. It has become a witch hunt that threatens public safety. It was a clear shift in strategy, no longer defending Reynolds and Cooper individually, but now shielding the entire profession. The push went further. Within days, selective excerpts from Maya's military file appeared on a conservative news site. Headline: Lieutenant Washington's History of Insubordination. The article dredged up her early disciplinary hearing in Afghanistan, conveniently omitting the fact that her superior, who had ordered inhumane treatment of civilians, was later court-martialed for human rights violations. Colonel Harrison summoned Maya to his office, sliding the printed article across the desk. "This is coordinated," he said grimly. "They're not searching for truth. They're seeding doubt." Maya skimmed the piece, her face unreadable. "They cut out the most important part." But I'm not surprised. The attacks on her credibility were only the beginning. Witnesses began reporting harassment. A college student who had filmed the incident found police cars parked outside his apartment all night. An elderly couple who had stepped in to help Maya suddenly received a barrage of bogus traffic citations. More alarming evidence vanished. The original dashcam files were reported corrupted when federal analysts requested a second review. Cooper's personal phone, containing months of incriminating texts, was mysteriously reset to factory settings while in police custody. In a closed-door FBI meeting, Agent Rodriguez looked Maya squarely in the eye. "They're circling the wagons. This isn't about Reynolds and Cooper anymore. The entire command structure is complicit in the cover-up." Maya nodded, unsurprised. "And the feds, we're still pushing, but every level hits resistance. Witnesses change their stories. Evidence disappears. Officials suddenly become too busy." Maya spoke quietly. "They're betting on fatigue. That public outrage will fade and the pressure will evaporate." Rodriguez's voice was heavy. "It's an old playbook, and it usually works." Political pressure shifted too. Leaders who once backed Maya began retreating, using safe phrases like "waiting for the full facts" or "supporting our police through difficult times." The mayor, once outspoken for justice, now emphasized healing and moving forward. Even within the army, Maya felt a subtle shift. Administrative paperwork was suddenly delayed. Security clearances, usually routine, were flagged for additional review. Colleagues who had once supported her now grew distant, some admitting they'd been advised to keep their distance. Harrison, steady at her side, spoke bluntly. "They're counting on you to break Maya. They want you to sign a settlement, take the money, and stay silent, as if nothing ever happened." Maya lifted her head, eyes unwavering. "That will never happen, sir." Harrison nodded, but his voice was low. "I know, but you need to understand. This is no longer a battle with 2 officers. This is a battle with a system determined to protect itself." General Phillips's office radiated austere authority. Polished wood desk walls lined with flags and medals, every detail arranged to remind visitors that power here was absolute. "Lieutenant Washington," he began without preamble, "I understand your pursuit of justice, but this case has grown far beyond a traffic stop. It's straining civil-military relations, disrupting base operations, and could jeopardize the careers of everyone involved, including yours. Maya stood at attention, spine straight. Sir, there's an offer, the general continued. The city is prepared to fire the two officers, conduct a limited review, and award you a substantial settlement. In return, you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and the federal investigation will be narrowed, focused only on Reynolds and Cooper. Maya didn't hesitate. I must decline, sir. General Phillips' expression hardened. Lieutenant, do you understand the consequences? Your promotion to captain, already approved, is now on hold. Your upcoming Pentagon assignment is frozen. This crusade could end the career you've worked so hard to build. Maya's voice was steady, unshaken. Sir, if my career can be threatened simply because I reported being assaulted in uniform, then this problem extends far beyond the Charleston PD. The general studied her in silence. Have you thought this through, yes, sir? And you remain resolute, yes, sir? He leaned back, contemplative. Your grandfather was Sergeant James Washington, 92nd Infantry Division, Buffalo Soldiers, correct? Maya froze for a beat. Yes, sir. I met him once at a veterans event. An extraordinary man, an extraordinary generation. Phillips rose, signaling the meeting's end. As Maya turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Washington. She paused. He would be proud of you. The words stirred her deeply, but the weight of the system pressed heavier than ever. Resistance was no longer subtle. It was blatant. Soon after, she received an email in her personal inbox, not her military account. From Reynolds himself. Let's meet privately. Settle this between us. Maya immediately reported it to military security and the FBI. Agent Rodriguez frowned. This could be an attempt to derail the investigation, or worse, a direct threat. We'll increase your protection. Meanwhile, Maya's performance evaluations mysteriously changed. New remarks appeared hinting she was lacking in cooperation and deficient in strategic judgment. Colonel Harrison caught it and demanded corrections, but the message was unmistakable. The system had many ways to strike back far beyond the original stop. Despite the pressure, Maya did not bend. When offered reassignment for her safety and to preserve her career, she refused. When faced with a payout large enough to secure her future conditioned on silence, she shook her head. What Maya didn't expect was that her refusal itself would trigger the turning point. Cooper, the younger officer from the traffic stop, finally buckled under the weight of investigation and his own conscience. Defying the union and rejecting immunity deals, he went to the FBI and signed a full deposition. This wasn't just me and Reynolds, his statement began. It was policy, unwritten but clear. Target certain neighborhoods, target certain kinds of drivers, inflate the numbers. No one was allowed to question it. His testimony didn't just implicate a partner, it dragged in the entire chain of command trainers, supervisors, and Sheriff Williams himself by name. When the news broke, the union immediately disowned him, labeling Cooper a traitor in an internal memo, a memo that leaked within hours. His family had to be relocated, placed under federal witness protection after a flood of serious threats. But the dam had burst. Seeing Cooper step forward, other officers, some anonymous, some openly, began offering testimony, each fragment exposing more of the larger picture. What began with Maya's single traffic stop had become a sweeping investigation impossible to smother with NDAs, payouts, or threats. In a rare moment of candor, Maya looked at Harrison. I never wanted this, sir. I only wanted justice for myself. Harrison nodded, eyes glinting with understanding. Sometimes Lieutenant Justice requires tearing down the very system that sustains injustice. You triggered Protocol Delta 7, but you also triggered something far more powerful, truth in a system built on denial. As resistance from entrenched power mounted, Maya began to wonder, was her resolve worth it? Her career might collapse. Her private life was in turmoil. Security threats grew by the day. Each morning felt heavier than the last. Was change worth the cost? Or would the vast machinery of the system win, carried by its sheer inertia? At 3:17 a.m., an encrypted file landed on Agent Rodriguez's secure server. The sender, anonymous. No subject line. Normally, the system would flag and quarantine it, but this wasn't a normal day, and Rodriguez had been waiting for a bombshell. Inside, over 5,000 internal communications from the Charleston Police Department spanning a decade. Emails, texts, training documents, memos, all meticulously annotated. Most damning were the unofficial guidelines for proactive policing in high-value zones, a euphemism for targeting black neighborhoods and black drivers. Rodriguez immediately launched the authentication protocol, then escalated to the Department of Justice. By dawn, an analysis team was poring over the files. By noon, results confirmed the data was real. This wasn't about a few bad actors. It was an organized system of discrimination shielded at the highest levels. The whistleblower left only a codename Sentinel, but the details suggested someone with deep privileged access to core systems. Meanwhile, Officer Cooper sat in a federal safe facility, finishing his final deposition before entering witness protection. His voice was weary, but his words were sharp as blades. It all started in the academy. Never written down, but made clear which neighborhoods to target, what kinds of drivers to suspect, how to fabricate reasons for a stop. A point system for arrests of black drivers. The more you scored, the better your chances for promotion. He admitted Reynolds was the worst, but also the most successful by department standards. 3 times Officer of the Month. Everyone knew what proactive really meant. Most crucially, Cooper confirmed what the leaked files had suggested, that not only Sheriff Williams, but the entire senior leadership were not unaware, but directly enabling and shielding the system. As evidence flooded into the DOJ, Maya was summoned urgently to Harrison's office. Inside, a team of lawyers and Agent Rodriguez were already waiting. Harrison didn't waste words. "We've reached the breaking point." Rodriguez laid it out. "The leaked files, combined with Cooper's extended testimony, have shifted the scope. This isn't just your case anymore, Lieutenant. This is a decade of systemic civil rights violations sanctioned at the highest levels." Maya listened, her face controlled, but inside, she knew the truth was now too clear to be buried. Rodriguez continued. "The DOJ is preparing to announce a full pattern or practice investigation into the Charleston PD. That means mandatory federal oversight, structural reforms, and likely criminal indictments, possibly including Sheriff Williams himself," Harrison added. "There's one more thing, Lieutenant. Reynolds has requested to meet with you. Under strict supervision, of course." Maya stiffened. The man who had slammed her head against a car, the arrogant one who smirked even as she bled, now wanted an audience. "Why should I agree?" she asked bluntly. Rodriguez's voice was cautious. "He claims to have information he hasn't revealed, not just about your case, but about other victims. I think Reynolds is desperate. The evidence against him is overwhelming. He may be bargaining for leniency, or he may genuinely want to help expose the full truth. People are rarely purely black or white. Perhaps Reynolds isn't either." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she gave a slight nod. "Very well, but everything must be under strict supervision." The meeting took place in a federal building under layers of security. Reynolds sat across from Maya, his face gaunt prison fatigues replacing the uniform that once made him swagger. The man who had smirked while cuffing her now looked like a hollow shadow. "Lieutenant Washington," he began, voice raspy. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Maya held his gaze, waiting. Reynolds hesitated, then forced out heavy words. "I've done things I can never undo. I use the badge as a weapon, not a shield. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want to make amends, at least in part, not just for you, for others." Maya tilted her head. "Others," Reynolds swallowed hard. "There's a database, off the official system. It logs every unlawful stop, every fabricated charge, every use of excessive force. They called it insurance. If one of us got exposed, the others could threaten to leak dirt in return. I know how to access it, and in there are at least 6 service members from the past 5 years." The air in the room thickened. Rodriguez gave Maya a sharp nod. This was entirely new information. "Why tell me now?" Maya asked. For the first time, Reynolds looked her straight in the eye. "Because you didn't break. They threw everything at you, threats, money smear campaigns. You stood firm. You made Cooper find his conscience. Now, maybe I've found what's left of mine. Too late, but still. Within hours, using Reynolds's intel, federal agents cracked the system. What they found went beyond imagination. More than 700 meticulously cataloged incidents, names, dates, falsified reports, tampered evidence, all logged by complicit officers themselves, a self-preserving network of mutual blackmail. That database became the breaking point. The Department of Justice no longer hesitated. Sheriff Williams was immediately suspended pending indictment for civil rights violations, conspiracy, and obstruction. 11 other senior officers were charged. The mayor announced the creation of a civilian oversight commission with unprecedented authority. The governor appointed a special prosecutor to review every case in the database, paving the way for hundreds of overturned convictions and compensation claims. As the news stormed outward, Maya sat in Harrison's office, her voice low but steady. This was never just about me. This is for everyone who had no protocol to trigger, no uniform to make their word believed. Harrison nodded slowly. You sparked the investigation, but what you've unleashed is far larger. The question isn't if there will be change. It's how deep that change will cut. Maya fell silent. The road ahead forked in two directions: to return to her military career, her Pentagon post and captain's rank now restored, or to step onto a new path, one where her voice could help reshape an entire system. That night, as she weighed the turning point of her life, Maya received another encrypted message. The sender sentinel, the anonymous whistleblower who had shaken the case wide open. Lieutenant Washington, what you began as a single act of resistance has given courage to many of us. We stayed silent out of fear, but you turned the impossible into the inevitable. That database was not just insurance for the corrupt. Some of us kept it as evidence, waiting for the day justice could come. That day arrived because of you. Signed, a friend on the inside. Maya stared at the words. She realized the true breaking point wasn't the leaks, nor Reynolds's confession, nor the hidden database. It was the moment she refused to accept injustice as normal, the instant her finger pressed the smart watch, activating Protocol Delta 7 and setting off an irreversible chain reaction. The only question left was, would that turning point lead to real transformation, or would the system eventually rebound as it had for decades? 6 months after that fateful day, the Charleston Police Department had been remade from the ground up. The DOJ's pattern, or practice investigation concluded with a binding federal consent decree, sweeping reforms enforced under strict oversight. Sheriff Williams resigned in disgrace, awaiting trial for civil rights violations, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Reynolds pled guilty to civil rights crimes and obstruction, sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Cooper received a reduced sentence of 3 years for cooperation, with early release possible. The command staff was entirely replaced. Interim leadership was assigned to a former FBI agent with a reputation for incorruptible integrity. The Civilian Oversight Commission, once temporary, became a permanent body with expanded powers. But the clearest symbol of change was Maya Washington herself. Now, a captain, she stood at a podium in a training hall facing rows of new police recruits and service members. A uniform, whether military or police, carries both privilege and responsibility. It means a community or a nation has trusted you with special authority. That trust is sacred, and it must never be abused. The training program Maya designed, mandatory for every officer in South Carolina, focused on reducing unconscious bias and de-escalation skills. Soon, other states began considering it as a model. The path that led her here had been anything but easy. After the investigation ended, Maya received countless offers, a Pentagon post, lucrative positions in the private sector, even invitations to enter politics. She declined them all, instead proposing a joint military-civilian initiative aimed at bridging divides and building lasting reform. Backed by both the Army and the federal government, the program spread, becoming a national movement for reform. Accountability isn't about punishment, Maya told the hall, her voice ringing. Accountability is the foundation of trust. Without it, authority turns into oppression, even when born of good intentions. Among those listening that day was a familiar face Bradley Cooper temporarily paroled to join the training. Once part of the corrupt machinery, he had also helped expose the truth. After the session, he approached slowly, hesitant. "Captain Washington, thank you for giving me this chance. I know many think I don't deserve to be here." Maya's eyes were calm but firm. Redemption isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you do. Your testimony helped expose a system that harmed hundreds. Cooper lowered his head, silent. In that moment, Maya realized true change didn't come only from verdicts or decrees, but from people willing to confront the darkness within themselves. "The work you're doing, it will keep this from happening again," Cooper murmured. Maya nodded slightly, her tone neither harsh nor indulgent. "Good. Remember that. Live by it. Let it guide every choice you make." As Cooper returned to his seat, Colonel Harrison stepped closer. "A powerful session, Captain," he observed. "But I noticed you didn't mention forgiveness." Maya allowed herself a faint smile. "Forgiveness is personal, sir. I can forgive without forgetting. I can work with those I once opposed without pretending the past never happened. Real change requires remembering, not erasing." Harrison nodded, thoughtful. The Pentagon called again. "They still want you for a strategic post." Maya answered immediately. "My answer hasn't changed. The work here isn't finished." The transformation extended far beyond Charleston. The database once built to shield corrupt officers now served as a map of justice. Under Maya's leadership, a joint legal fund was established to provide free support for hundreds of victims named within. Hundreds of wrongful convictions were overturned. Records cleared, lives restored. Millions in compensation went to those whose futures had been stolen by discrimination. More importantly, Protocol Delta 7 was no longer a pilot. It became a joint forces standard extended to all service members, paired with mandatory training on rights and activation. Resistance, of course, arose. Police unions railed against it as anti-cop. Conservative media decried it as a political stunt. Even some generals worried granting protections to service members might strain civil authority. Maya answered not with rhetoric, but with results. Crime rates in Charleston did not rise, they dipped slightly. Police morale, after the initial shock, improved as the system grew more transparent and fair. Community trust measured by independent surveys reached the highest levels in decades. Even the harshest skeptics found it hard to argue with evidence. The most striking symbol of change came from an unexpected place. Former Sheriff Williams, now awaiting trial, requested to meet Maya. After careful thought, she agreed. The once proud man sat across from her, now aged and worn. "I thought I was protecting my officers. I convinced myself it was for public safety. I never called it racism. I called it efficiency." Maya stayed silent, letting him speak. "When did you realize you were wrong?" she asked at last. Williams faltered. "Not when the evidence surfaced. Not when I was charged. But when I saw the faces in that database, hundreds of lives destroyed under my command. That's when I understood." That conversation deepened Maya's conviction real change wasn't just about new laws or new leaders. It was about changing how people saw each other not as statistics, but as human beings worthy of dignity. The ripple spread nationwide. Congress passed the Service Member Civil Rights Protection Act, setting national standards for police interactions with military personnel with harsher penalties for violations. Many states built on it, expanding protections to all citizens. Maya had changed. The lieutenant who once trembled as she activated Delta 7 to protect herself was now Captain Washington, a figure who represented not only the Army, but an entire movement for reform. From victim, she had become a builder. From someone swept along, she had become the one steering the course. When the training session ended, Maya lingered reviewing notes for the next day. A young recruit, shy and hesitant, approached. "Captain Washington?" The girl faltered. I joined this academy because of you, because of what you did. I want to be a different kind of officer, one that people can trust. Like you made me believe." Maya looked up at her face. In the cadet's eyes, she saw her younger self, idealistic, vulnerable, yet determined. And she smiled softly, but firmly. In that moment, Maya understood her fight had not only dismantled an old system, but planted seeds for a new generation, those who would write the next chapters of justice with their own lives. Because you proved the system can change. If enough people demand it, the cadet added. Maya nodded, replying quietly. The system only truly changes when the people inside it change. Remember that when you face the choice between what's easy and what's right. As the cadet left, Maya sat in silence, reflecting on the journey of the past year. The scar on her temple had faded, but remained visible, both a mark of injustice and a testament to resistance. That moment of humiliation had become a movement, then reform, reaching into structures once thought untouchable. The work was unfinished. Maya knew reform is a process, not an event. But the foundation was there, and for the first time she believed in lasting change. Exactly 1 year since the day she was handcuffed on I-26, Maya returned to that roadside. The shoulder was quiet traffic light in the early morning. No plaque, no monument. But for her, it was sacred ground where she had suffered disgrace and where a national reckoning had begun. Charleston was no longer the same. The police department, once known as a bastion of discrimination, was now a model of reform. The woman Maya had recommended, Dr. Regina Taylor, a former civil rights attorney, was now the city's first black female police chief, hosting delegations from across the country. The secret database, once a tool of concealment, was now historical evidence. 217 convictions had been vacated. Over $15 million in compensation paid to victims. Reynolds was serving his 10-year sentence in Pennsylvania, but had joined an anti-bias program recounting his own downfall. Cooper, paroled early, now worked full-time with the Police Reform Commission, serving as a bridge between the force and the community. And Maya, now Captain Washington, had been tasked with designing the Military Personnel Protection Initiative, expanding Delta 7 into a nationwide system safeguarding service members from civil rights violations. In its first year alone, dozens had already been protected. As Maya stood at the roadside, a familiar black SUV pulled up. General Harrison stepped out slow but steady as eyes, a mix of sternness and admiration. "I figured I'd find you here," he said. "Not a pilgrimage, sir," Maya replied with a faint smile. "Just a reminder of what was lost and what was changed." Both, Harrison agreed. "But now we have to go. 1,400 hours, the Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony." Maya still found it hard to believe. She had seen her actions as duty, yet now she was to receive the nation's highest civilian honor. But she understood the medal was not for her alone, but for everyone who had spoken out, fought, and paid the price. Harrison's voice dropped as he stepped closer. "One more thing. The President is establishing a National Oversight Commission, an entirely new body with unprecedented authority to investigate civil rights violations in law enforcement nationwide. And he wants you to lead it." Maya looked out at the stretch of road where her life had changed forever. This was no longer just Charleston. This was the United States. A year ago, she had been a lieutenant assaulted and silenced on the side of a highway. Now she stood on the verge of becoming the voice for millions. That afternoon, as the sun slanted across the interstate, Maya thought quietly, "To accept this, I'll have to leave the Army." General Harrison nodded calmly. "A temporary separation order has already been approved. If you accept, your rank will be preserved when you return." As they spoke, another SUV arrived. Out stepped Chief Regina Taylor, Maya's chosen successor, who had transformed Charleston into a model of reform. "I knew I'd find you here," Washington Taylor said, her voice solemn yet warm. "Today isn't just your day, it's all of ours." They stood in silence for a moment, three people, three worlds once opposed, now sharing a common milestone. Then Chief Taylor spoke. "The City Council has voted to adopt the Washington Protocols as permanent policy. And most remarkable of all, the police union supports it." In Maya's eyes, a deep emotion flickered. This was the true victory change, embraced from within the system itself. Her phone vibrated. A secure line. Maya listened, then relayed, "The Department of Justice has finished reviewing the database Reynolds provided. They found similar patterns in 17 departments across 8 states. Next week, a series of nationwide investigations will begin." Harrison narrowed his eyes. What began here won't end here. Maya nodded. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That afternoon at the Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony, Maya stood in full dress uniform as the president placed the medal around her neck. Applause thundered through the chamber. Yet, in her brief remarks, Maya said simply, "This medal is not mine alone. It belongs to all who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable, to all who demanded that our system live up to its ideals." At the reception afterward, familiar faces appeared. Cooper arrived with his wife and children, bowing his head in gratitude for the path of redemption Maya had helped open. Reynolds's daughter approached with a message from her father in prison. He was now recounting his mistakes to each new police cadet as a warning. Maya made no promise of forgiveness. She only said, "The road to redemption requires courage. Tell your father I recognize that." Finally, she met Sentinel, the anonymous whistleblower. A former IT technician, he had quietly gathered evidence for years. "When you stood firm under pressure, I knew the time had come. One steadfast person can create the breach that allows many others to follow." A week later, at the Charleston Police Academy graduation, Maya addressed the first class trained under the Washington protocols. In the audience sat both Cooper, released early, and Reynolds, still in reform. Programs, their presence proof that change could reach even those who once went astray. Maya spoke, her voice steady. "The badge you receive today is not only authority, it is responsibility. It exists to protect the most vulnerable. Authority only has meaning when tied to accountability." As she watched the cadets take their oath, Maya thought back to the day she pressed the button on her smartwatch. Then it had been an act of survival. Today she understood it had launched a movement, a transformation of an entire system. Justice never comes easily. It always meets resistance. But Maya had seen with her own eyes walls once thought immovable could be shaken when enough hands push against them. She closed with a final charge. "Your commitment to justice begins today. Let your courage never falter even when tested." Applause filled the hall. But in Maya's heart, it was not pride she felt, but a steady hope that what had changed would never be undone. Underscore, 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 outro. On that roadside, beneath the flashing lights, a story far greater than a traffic stop was written. A testament to the fragile line between power and justice, between arrogance and dignity. On one side stood men who believed the badge gave them absolute authority. On the other, a woman forced into weakness, yet standing tall in the dignity of a soldier. And it was her steadfastness that turned the tide. The final message is clear. Power never defines us. It is how we hold on to our humanity, even in adversity, that reveals our true worth. So if the day comes when you must choose, will you stay silent and yield, or will you stand up like Lieutenant Maya Washington did? What about you? What does this story make you think about justice, fairness, and human dignity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories that touch the heart.